It is now 2 days post-freeze, and we're going farming. Headed to get the seed tender. We've got beans to plant. Look at that, we got 2 people helping us today. This is my favorite way to hook up a trailer, watching from the camera in the truck. We're going over to the seed shed to grab what remains of our Don Mario 3932 Enlist beans. We purchased a handful more than we needed. We have some surplus and we can't return them. Unlike the Pioneer beans we have sitting up there at Bruce's that are untreated, we can return those or just never collect them. Whereas these treated Don Mario beans are essentially worthless because they're treated. You can't sell them to an elevator as regular grain. And soybean seed is not very viable after 1 year. We're gonna plant them out and readjust our numbers on the Pioneer side. We're not entirely sure how many we have, so we're gonna weigh them. Zero the scales out. The wind's probably blowing it around, that's why we're not getting a very stable reading. Oh no, there we go. There's actually quite a few in there. Net weight, 2,475 pounds for 45 units. 2,475 pounds for 45 units. You divide to 2,475 by 45. We get 55 pounds per unit. Those are pretty heavy beans. Scales flirting around 950, so we'll do 950 divided by 55. 17 units. That's enough to plant about 15 acres. Well, 14 maybe. We're down to a small number of fields. A majority of them are a very minimal amount of acres. Because of that, we're putting Enlist beans on them. It just makes them easier to spray. We're loading up more of the Pioneer 38T05 Enlist soybeans. We're gonna plant those after we run out these Don Mario 39 beans. It'll be interesting to see how they compare agronomically and in final yield.
The red light's blinking. I'm not an expert, but that does not look like a good one.
Time to go load the planter. We have arrived at our destination. Hello, planter. Your package has been delivered. Our other 4-wheel drive actually left bright and early this morning with Jeff behind the wheel. He went over west to that new farm. I think he left here probably 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning. Ooh, just makes me ill thinking about it. I'm a night owl, not an early bird. I may be the only person in my family, though, who enjoys staying up late as opposed to getting up early, which is not very farmer-like of me. The benefit to leaving that early, you don't have to deal with that much traffic. Traffic on a 10-minute drive to a field's really not that big of a deal. When you're driving an hour plus to get to a farm, you want to avoid as much as possible, especially when you're going through downtown Shelbyville. Not that that's a populated area by any means, but it only takes a few cars to cause some headaches. Other things that cause headaches, the ladder on the seed tender. My injury is slightly healing though. We power washed all the oil off of the steps the other day from our leak. Now it's not a slipping hazard. Got a handful of beans left in that tank. It doesn't matter though, they're 3/8 and they're Enlist. These are 3/9 Enlist from Don Mario we're gonna add on top. Doesn't have to be too kosher. Run the rocks out. Got a rock right there. Got a rock. I prefer not to have to do this. It's very uncomfortable. Every time I tell myself you gotta run the rocks out if you go down that rock road. And every single time I forget to run the rocks out. Maybe I lost a few brain cells in that head injury. Somehow the temperature today is warmer than it was yesterday, but it feels colder. What kind of cruel world is it that we live in? It's not too much to ask for 75 degrees and sunny every day, is it? I know our poor freezing cold crops would like that too. Tractor doesn't mind it. While we wait for the tractor to get a little bit warmer and take off, we might as well prepare our resources for the day. Going to the church farm because it's located at a church, and we are planting Don Mario 3932E. What color do we want them to be? And they need more colors. Where's the greens at? We'll do tan. Variety to rose 3932E. This isn't entirely accurate because there were some Pioneer beans left in there. 300,000 is my clean-out population, not my planting population. 160K, 50 pounds downforce, we'll back that out because we want these shallow. We know when we get to the field, that is going to be too much. All right, just waiting for the tractor to warm up a little bit, and we're gonna hit the road for like 2 minutes, and then we'll be at the field. And we're here. This is the type of farms we're dealing with today. Not super productive, but it is our job to farm them. They can't all be your best. Oh, the joys of farming around trees. Some days I think I could start a tree trimming business with the planter. Snap them off as you go by. The deer like this farm. The deer is in the four-legged deer, not the green and yellow deer. There's some heavy rain in the forecast this weekend. We better make sure we get these beans in the right spot. Field cultivator did a fantastic job out here. Other than pulling up a bunch of rocks. Let's check her out. Wow, that's a lot deeper than I thought it was. Inch to an inch and a quarter. It's just so soft out here from the field cultivator running that these row units, even set on a very shallow depth with little down pressure, are still getting pushed way into the ground. So we're gonna back that down pressure off a little bit, maybe another 20 pounds, and go from there. I don't wanna pull the units out any farther because I think if I do that, we're gonna have beans on top of the ground. I never played track. Ugh. Don't worry, that's our property too. I wouldn't do that to a neighbor, at least not during the day. Ugh. Oh, darn it. Farms like this are exactly what section control is made for. I'd be wasting all sorts of seed planting this if I didn't have section control to shut off all those units. And just like that, we are done with this tiny little field. I know some of you are probably interested in some aTrippyFarmer merchandise or souvenirs. Let me tell you what, if you're in the Mattoon area, come out here, pick up a few rocks, I'll sign them for you, you can keep them. Hey, there's one right there. As many as you can find out here in the field, they're yours. I was going to download a new weather app on my phone and I couldn't remember my Apple password. I've gotten myself in kind of a long-term predicament on my Apple account because I don't know what my password is, and I basically have to change it every single time I want to download a new app. So it could be anything. The worst part about changing your password is that you can't use the old ones, and they have very strict criteria of what you can use and what you can't use. So who knows what my password is? It's probably just like 4 random words out of the dictionary. I'll have to change it, and then I can tell you guys about the weather. It must just be Small Field Friday. We've got another one in the books. 2 more to go. But first, we gotta get some beans. Can't go anywhere without getting a little bit more beans at home first. Whoa! J&M Mega Remote. Still got quite a few of these Don Mario beans in here. The bean itself is a little bit bigger than the rest of them that we're planting, so I don't think they plant as heavy. Just on an apples to apples comparison. Probably still 3 bags in each side. It's like Christmas, but a little more expensive. I figured out what that red light at the seed treater meant. He was running out of coloring. So some of these beans are still a little bit plain. The coloring turns them pioneer green, and he claims to also had a biological product in it, like a root growth enhancer. I figured they just used green for branding purposes. We've got enough of those Pioneer 38 T05 Enlist beans to last us for a few hours. I've got 4 loose bags on there in case we run out to kind of cover our rear end. We won't have a truck super close to the field, and as I said many times, you'd rather have them and not need them than need them and not have them. We're headed down to Lake Mattoon to plant some lakefront soybean property. I forgot how rough it is when you take a loaded planter down the road. I feel like I'm not in full control over where we're going. The planter has a little bit of a say. We are at our field though, so no worries. I noticed that one of the T-handles for the closing wheel was loose when I unfolded. Probably just bumped out in the last field or going down the road. Might as well do a status check. I was told by the boss that there is a wet spot out here on this farm, and he said do not try and plant it. And he sounded pretty firm about that, so we'll have to keep an eye out. I'm sure we won't miss it. I would guesstimate that this is the spot that's wet. Especially based on the standing water. Well, it's not really that wet. Except for that is. It's never the spot that looks wet that gets you stuck. Don't understand why I have that kind of misfortune. Trimming some more trees. Look at that. We're just spreading that Christmas cheer. Full of money. Those are 1.5 inches in the ground. We're wanting these soybeans to be as shallow as possible while still having dirt cover over the top. The reason being, we have a relatively wet forecast over the next week. This farm right here, which is even lighter than the farm we just came from, will struggle if it gets a lot of rain on it. We want to prevent that from happening and give our soybeans the easiest path to success. Here's the app I've been using. It's called Dark Sky. I kind of like the interface. That's why I went through all the trouble of resetting my password to get the mobile app as opposed to using the browser version. Saturday they're calling for 1/4 inch of rain. Wednesday, 0.7 inches of rain, which is pretty good. That puts us at almost 1 inch within 4 days. Then we go to Thursday, 0.75 inches of rain. So that puts us at almost 1 3/4 inches. And then Friday, 0.2. So over the next week, we are looking at 2 inches of rain. Now there is some positive to this story. Look at the temperatures these 3 days. 78, 84, 82. And I guess honorable mention 67 and 74 degree highs. That's going to be very good for getting these soybeans started and out of the ground. We're putting them as high up in the ground as possible. That way, if we do get a heavy rain, they won't get packed in. They'll just pop right out of the ground. All right, we're crossing over to the back half of the farm. I have no idea what we're getting ourselves into. Hopefully we don't bury the row units. No problem at all. There's really no chance these beans do anything other than feed the deer. Gotta plant it though. Second half of the field's done. Time to cross through the mud hole again. Ooh. About the only time this year I've gotten mud on the planter tires, but not on the row units. Say bye, Lenny. Bye, bud. Did you enjoy your ride in the tractor? He's shaking his head no. It's ready to hit the road, but I gotta check the tire pressure real quick. We'll check this one. Plenty of air, just as I expected. I'm a little bit lighter now though. I wish these tractors had the option or the transmission that makes them drive faster down the road. I think there is one that goes like 30 miles an hour. We're topped out at 26. 4 miles an hour doesn't sound like much, but it's over a 10 to 15% increase in speed from what I'm going now. Maybe I just need to learn to be patient. Nah, that's no fun. We can't complain about the cell service in this field. We've got a tower right there. That or the government spying on us, either one. It never fails that you finish the field on the opposite side from your exit. Guess we're gonna drive back over everything we planted to leave. Poor planning on my part. Oh, stopping by home, topping off seed, topping off fuel. Only a couple farms left to go. Every time we talk about this, you forget it. Pretty dreary outside. Hope we don't drum up a rain. More 3/8 beans in the tank. That's gonna make someone angry. I threw it over that way. Not my problem. The worst part about farming next to tree lines is that they're always wet. You never know where you're going to bury the planter out here. Case in point, right there. A little bit tacky. Just think, there are people out there that order their planter without markers. How would they ever plant a farm like this? I can only imagine how messy this farm would be if I had no idea where to drive. I'm gonna try my dad's technique for maneuvering inlets, and that is driving over them. Huh. It actually worked. Oh yeah, this is totally dry enough to plant. Oh man. I can tell already, I'm gonna need a screwdriver.
This is gonna take me forever to get unplugged.
There is so much mud in here that my wheel is not even turning. Holy cow. Totally dry enough to plant, Dad. Jeez. What a mess. Nutrient just showed up and they're spraying the outside of this field right now, so I pulled out in the middle. Hopefully I'll be out of the way long enough to unplug these darn units. As long as the Truvy openers right here spin, it's not that big of a deal to have mud on it. The rest will fall off. These are what we're concerned about. They get packed full of mud and they won't spin. These are what create the seed trench. And trust me, this is not the first time this year we've had to unplug these. Somewhere in there is a closing wheel. This is a lot of mud to dig out. What is this stuff? Look at that, there's an earthworm. The rim is literally packed full of mud. Holy cow, that's packed full. Where's the seed tube? There's no good way to get this mud out from these openers. You just gotta keep trying to spin it. There's a lot of mud on here. I don't know where it came from, maybe hell. It's like some kind of super glue material. I'm going to shut the planter off and plant through the field right now, and maybe it'll loosen some of that up. The nutrient guy's probably wondering what I'm doing. Don't worry, buddy, you'll see. Looks like we got a lot of the mud off. Again, though, the excess mud was not really the issue. The Truvy openers are the issue. I didn't finish, I just need to get it out of the spray guy's way. All right, the only row unit I have left that needs unplugged is that one there in the back. For reference, this is what they're supposed to spin like. Pretty easy. I can smell that residual on the ground, laying in fresh herbicide. For comparison, I've been working on about 4 Truvy openers here on the right side, and they're a little bit hard to spin. I think they're still technically plugged, shooting mud out. We're just gonna go ahead and start planting again. Switch that back to planting mode. Guidance, continue with coverage. Just pull the planter up, back's on. The best part about this whole deal is out there while I was working, I only got 3 spam phone calls, all from Mattoon numbers, which is where I live, is Mattoon. So I answered all of them. I was pissed off. Wasting my time. That's behind us now. Let's just forget about it. Although I do think they may have manufactured this mud over in Wuhan. I had an excellent question in the comments of one of the previous videos asking about the profitability of corn and soybeans and why we decide to plant a certain crop versus the other if the other one may be more profitable. This makes a lot of sense to pick one crop over the other. However, agronomically and logistically, it's not quite that simple. Let's talk about the agronomics first. Continuous cropping, such as corn on corn, is not conducive to high yields. It is typically associated with a yield drag from increased pressure of diseases and insects. Because the previous crop was the same as the current crop, you've basically already been infiltrated the last season with all of these predators, and they don't have to move anywhere to attack again this year. Because of that issue, you have to pay very specific attention to fertility, tillage, disease pressure, and other aspects of management that you wouldn't necessarily have to put a microscopic view on if you were just rotating crops. This is the case for both corn and soybeans. You're just reinforcing the populations of pests out in the field. Now, there's not always a yield drag, but it is very common. Now let's consider the logistical side of the equation. First and foremost, with some types of fertility management, you actually do not have that much mobility to switch crops. If you put on fall anhydrous ahead of what you're thinking is a corn crop, you would be essentially wasting a lot of money by not planting corn. That nitrogen is gone by the next year, and the soybeans don't really take advantage of it. That is a very important consideration. For soybeans, you don't have this limitation. The fertilizer, if you put any on ahead of a soybean crop, is the same thing that corn uses in terms of potassium and phosphorus. One very big hurdle, though, in terms of equipment, is that harvesting corn is very labor intensive. Because corn produces such a large amount of grain, it takes a lot of effort come harvest time to harvest all of that, transport it, and store it. If you could store your crop on a 50-50 split of corn and soybeans, you're not going to be able to store a whole crop of corn. Let's talk about the most important part, though, the financial side of the equation. Almost every acre across the Corn Belt is just as capable of growing soybeans as it is of producing corn. Because of this, corn and soybeans have grown to trade at a very close ratio on the futures market. The price of soybeans is usually 2.5 times the price of corn. If the ratio gets above that 2.5 mark, then you start to see more acres planted soybeans. If it gets below that mark, farmers are encouraged to plant corn. That simply boils down to supply and demand. Higher prices of a certain commodity encourage people to plant that crop. New crop corn, which is essentially the corn that is going in the ground across the United States for next harvest season, is trading at around $5.50 per bushel. New crop soybeans are around $13.80 per bushel. That comes out to right around that 2.5 ratio. Keep in mind, though, these are nearly record prices. We haven't seen anything like this in almost 8 years. I believe July of 2013 was the last time prices were this high, and that was because 2012 was a very nasty drought and we had no grain at all. At the end of the day, the net profitability of corn and soybeans are very close on our farm. I would say corn does have a slight edge in terms of profitability, but not enough to justify any kind of crazy management maneuvers. Some farmers who are very aggressive, whether they're working with tight margins or just wanting to maximize profitability till that last cent, may consider planting more corn. Just for the sake of simplicity, we like to keep an even split of corn and soybeans, 50-50, continuous rotation year after year. Every farm is completely different. A lot of people in our area, though, don't really do any continuous cropping. I was kind of all over the place there, so hopefully I answered your question. Essentially, making that choice is just splitting hairs. If you want to do it, go for it. If you don't want to do it, you're not really going to be penalized at all. There is very good money to be made in both corn and soybeans, especially in our area. Well, after a long fight, I finally finished this darn field. I hope I don't have to come back till I'm in a combine. We're going to try and plant these beans out where I buried the planter. We're going to an extend flex. We have an enlist in the tank. It's got to go. Look at that. There's water in there. There was not water in there when I went across that. On the line, love isn't always on time. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Since I can't play copyrighted music, you just have to imagine what that actually sounds like if I wasn't singing it. We're at our last farm in the Mattoon area. Gotta dump the planter, put in some extend flex beans. I don't think we planned our seed right. Got way too many beans left over. About got the enlist beans cleaned out. There we need to get. beautiful, nice plants and beans. See, I'm not the only one in my family that's messy. Must be hereditary. When it's Friday night on the farm, nothing to do, done planting corn, everyone just helps me load and unload the soybean planter. I'm not complaining. The sun may have set, but I can still see that that is definitely a rain cloud. Please do not rain me out. This is our last field around here. That poor marker has seen more trees this year than it has dirt. I've only used it like 3 or 4 times to actually mark something. Maybe we'll have to get it a gift card or something, that way it's not upset. I told you that this morning, Jeff went bright and early over to our farm, over to the west, like an hour and a half or so in the field cultivator. He's been there working all day, no major issues, and as he was coming home about 45 minutes to an hour ago, guess what? The final stretch for the field cultivator blows a tire. One thing I'm not, though, is surprised. We always expect something to go wrong, so we had spare tires ready to go. Unfortunately, though, I was busy here planting. I couldn't help change the tire. We did it, Patrick. We saved the city. This basically concludes about 99.5% of our acreage here around home. We've got that big farm out west we still need to plant. I'm not sure when we're going to get to that. It is good to have this done. We are road ready and homebound. Of course, after we check the tire pressure. That's a pretty sweet rig. Let's hit the road. Born in the USA. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. Well, what are you beeping for? We're not supposed to be planting. Beans are almost $14 though. We might consider planting the road. Back home to pull her in for the night. Safe and sound with the other planter. No GPS. Thanks for the protection from the government, Barn. I was going to say my goodbyes. I don't think this video would really be full circle if I didn't go look at our beans that we were concerned with frost damage, which is what my original intention was. And then I got sidetracked by actual work in the planter. I hate when that happens. A little bit different scouting conditions than we normally like to have. We gotta make do with what we're served though. We're way out here in the field looking at the spot we analyzed as the snow was falling. Not only are they unscathed, they actually have grown a little bit more. Probably just today during this warm weather. I'm incredibly surprised. Look at these. No obvious tissue damage, very firm cotyledons here. If they were soft and squishy, we would know that they had been damaged somewhat, but they're firm. Freezing temperatures destroy that cellular structure, which is what kills the plants. We've got a ton of beans out here in the field popping out of the ground. Next week it's going to be 80 degrees out here. We're liable to have the field canopied by then. Just kidding, we will not have the field canopied by then. Well, to answer the question of life or death for our soybeans, they're living, and not only they're living, they're thriving right now. It's hard to imagine, and I'm a little bit surprised myself, that we made it through that weather anomaly without any major damage. Now, there are subsoil disease issues we will have to keep an eye on from the cool, wet weather. We will dig into that another day. I think we've done enough farming for this video. I appreciate you all staying with me. I know we've kind of been all over the place. Thank you for tuning in. As always, I really appreciate your support. Like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and comment down below if you have any questions. You know I love to talk about farming. Have a great day, everyone. Peace!